I like my battles to have a layer of strategy to them, as clever writing can keep the most mundane of concepts interesting, which we've seen so many times with the likes of JoJo. Gambling series naturally excel at this, whether our MC is trying to cheat his way through a gamble, figure out the trick behind a complex game, or gain a psychological advantage over his opponent, with the mental breakdown you see as characters are at their wits' end often being more satisfying than any beatdown you'd see in an action series. It's hard to find something that checks all these boxes, with Kaiji and some episodes of Death Parade being the first to come to mind for me. Recently, however, I've been reading a hidden gem called Usogui that takes all these aspects and pushes them to the extreme, resulting in a phenomenal series that's truly unique, and one of the best I've ever had the pleasure of reading. The premise is simple. There's an organisation known as Kakaroo, mainly made up of referees, that preside over high-stakes gambles played by their 48 members, making sure that rules are enforced and debts are collected. With many of these members having considerable influence, and due to just how strong the referees are, Kakaroo is a very powerful organisation, untouchable by the government in most instances, meaning many members dream of meeting the requirements to challenge the leader to a gamble, with victory allowing you to take over the organisation. One such person is legendary gambler Madarame Baku, also known as Usogui, a.k.a. the Lie Eater. After meeting an ordinary man called Kaji Takaomi and helping him out of debt, resulting in him idolising Baku and wanting to become his equal, the two join Kakaroo and work their way up the organisation in the hopes of being able to challenge the leader. If you're interested in gambling series, you've probably watched Kaiji, where the main character has flashes of absolute brilliance and has good intuition, but ultimately is a gambling junkie which leads to his downfall many times. Baku, on the other hand, is a genius, an enigmatic legend in the underworld who rose up Kakaroo previously as a teenager with unbelievable intelligence, cunning and insight, eventually giving him his namesake. Due to the insanely high level of play here, it means that the gambles themselves get more intense, complex and outlandish as the story develops, and is one of the biggest strengths of the series. From escaping a rundown mansion while chased by a serial killer to navigating a huge labyrinth, the premise of each game is always instantly captivating, with many interesting caveats to spice up even the simplest of games and turn them into a well thought out battle of wits. Gambles of this level naturally call for appropriate stakes, and Usogui has some insanely fucked up penalties. I don't want to spoil too much about the matches in this video, so I won't show any pictures here, but there's a lot of torture in this, and no other series can come close to just how extreme these gambles can get. In many cases, a quick death would be a godsend, and by upping the intensity through these brutal aspects of the match, you'll be on the edge of your seat throughout, watching how the gamblers try and avoid the worst case scenario and whether they can keep their cool in the most terrifying of situations. Another interesting aspect of how these play out is that as long as you don't specifically break the rules, anything goes, meaning in most instances a wide variety of cheating and backstage interference is allowed, and if this occurs, it's the participant on the receiving end's fault for not having preemptive measures in place. As a result, both sides frequently have strong fighters to muscle their way to the desired outcome, giving multiple layers to each match as we have the Kakaroo members carrying out their gamble, and fighters interfering and trying to further their teammates' goals at the same time. The referees will also be involved in fights as they try and take out rule breakers and, interestingly, fight each other, with one referee challenging another of a higher rank to a 10-second fight to the death. We are introduced to a whole host of referees throughout the series, and these ranking battles mean that they could die at any time, giving our supporting cast a refreshing sense of mortality as well as unravelling some of the mistake behind Kakaroo as we learn more about what it means to be a referee, their motivations, and why they'd put their life on the line. The concept of 10-second fights also made them more intense for me, with both fighters going full throttle right from the beginning. There's no feeling each other out here, just pure simple bloodlust with zero room for error, and it really sells just how strong these fighters are. When not fighting amongst themselves, referees will also be dealing with the various groups trying to disrupt the matches. Gambles usually have a small amount of players, anywhere from about 2 to 4, and the risk of this is that it could result in big breaks between key characters and factions appearing, hindering development in certain aspects. To counter this, the outside interference seen so often in fights do a good job of allowing multiple plot points to progress at once, developing characters and building up future antagonists. Unfortunately, this can actually hinder the series on occasion, with the fights and gambles all being interconnected, making it hard to follow a character's actions and thought process for the more complex matches as it relies on something multiple other characters are doing. There's one arc during the middle of the series that's quite bad for this, and when you have the translation team releasing about 10 pages of explanation, you know it's getting a tad too complicated. Thankfully, however, most gambles are easy enough to follow if you just take your time and think about the information given to you, and while it may not be the same for everyone, personally I found the charm of the series with its art and characters compelling enough to make me power through the more confusing segments. Due to fight smoothing aspects of the overall plot forward, a good chunk of this manga is dedicated to the battles, and they're always a joy to watch, with absurdly strong villains having powers defying common sense and brutal attacks accompanied by gorgeous artwork. When someone gets attacked, detail is put into the point of impact, with it getting absolutely flattened, and it's extremely satisfying to see each time, with each move having enough weight behind it to sell the combatant's inhuman strength. One of the best aspects of both the fights and the gambles is that when characters are pushed to their limits, their eccentricities start to come out, giving us a whole host of absolutely bizarre, crazy cast members. The series will take itself seriously with meticulous strategies and planning, but doesn't shy away from letting loose with absurd character traits and power-ups, and while the over-the-top nature may be too much for some, I absolutely adore how unique even the most minor of villains can be, with their odd habits making sure they stick in your mind. One of the manga's best ways of making a character stand out is when their mask slips and we see their grotesque, exaggerated expressions, or see them looking dead inside as their dark nature is revealed for the first time. You'll either love this or find it overly comical at times and hard to take seriously, but it's the main reason I love the art so much. This is a gambling series, and when we meet characters, they'll have a degree of mystique to them as the cast feel each other out, try and gauge their opponent's true nature, and these brief glimpses can really help set the tone as we realise we're facing off against an absolute psychopath or we've completely misjudged their character. It helps add another element as we try and figure out the antagonist's true intentions, and for when we see the more exaggerated, disgusting expressions, I think they're pretty apt for what are essentially a bunch of gambling and fighting junkies, as no matter how hard they try and appear normal, their mask will slip and we'll see their true revolting selves in the end. When you're gambling at these high levels, no matter how intelligent you are, you're clearly an addict addicted to the thrill of the stakes, and these facial expressions seen throughout are a good reminder that almost the entire cast are absolutely insane, fucked up people in one way or another. Don't get the wrong idea though, this manga isn't just wacky characters doing wacky things with no substance. There's some great development with the main cast, such as Kaji trying to follow in Baku's footsteps and the journey of Yako trying to become the highest ranked referee. For the big plot and character reveals, there is also a ton of foreshadowing, meaning you could easily read this a good 3 or 4 times, find out new information, and have a different perspective on events. It's that well written. No matter what you want out of this series, whether it be tense psychological battles or extreme setup for gambles, it'll manage to deliver, with the author shifting the tone throughout, but always excelling at whatever he tries to convey. With interesting characters, a compelling world filled with political intrigue, gorgeous artwork, and some of the most intense battles you'll ever find, there's never been an easier recommendation for me.